I stood there, frozen in the doorway of the most important boardroom of my life, when I heard his voice echoing down the hall. She doesn't have the experience to lead this project. We need someone more capable. Edward's words, my own husband's words, sliced through me like shards of glass. 22 years of marriage, 15 years sacrificing my career to support his, and now he was sabotaging me in front of the investors who could change my life forever? My hands trembled as I clutched my presentation folder, the same presentation I'd rehearsed hundreds of times, representing my last gasp of professional dignity at 45. The echo of the ensuing male laughter still rings in my ears, but in that moment, something inside me awakened. Something that had been dormant for decades and would never again allow myself to be humiliated. But to understand how I got to that devastating moment, I need to go back in time to the roots of the woman I was before I lost myself in the expectations of others. My name is Helen, and at 23, I was a promising advertising executive at one of the biggest agencies in New York City. I woke up every day at 5 in the morning, not because anyone forced me, but because the fire of ambition burned within me like an unquenchable flame. My desk was always the first occupied in the office. My creativity overflowed into campaigns that made clients sigh with admiration, and my future shone like a constellation of endless possibilities. It was during this golden period of my life that I met Edward at a marketing conference. He was 30, wore impeccable suits, and spoke about business with a confidence that instantly mesmerized me. His brown eyes seemed to hold secrets of success that I longed to uncover, and his laughter resonated like a melody I wanted to hear forever. When he invited me to dinner, my heart pounded as if I were about to embark on an extraordinary adventure. The first few years of dating were magical. Edward supported me in every project, celebrated each of my victories as if they were his own, and whispered in my ear that I was the most talented woman he had ever known. We built dreams together, him as an entrepreneur, me as a renowned advertising executive, a professional and personal partnership that promised to conquer the world. When he proposed on a starlit night on the terrace of his apartment with the city lights spread out at our feet, I said yes without hesitation. I thought I was choosing a lifelong partner, not an executioner of my self-esteem. The first signs of change appeared subtly, like shadows lengthening imperceptibly at dusk. Edward started making seemingly innocent comments about my professional attire. "Don't you think that skirt is a little too short for a serious meeting? Or maybe a more subdued lipstick shade would be more appropriate for a married woman." Initially, I interpreted this as care and protection, as if he wanted to preserve my reputation. How naive I was. When I became pregnant with Sophia, our first daughter, Edward transformed into the most attentive husband in the world. He brought flowers every Friday, made calming teas when I felt nauseous, and caressed my belly, whispering promises of eternal love for our baby. But between the cuddles and the vows of love, he planted poisonous seeds. "You need to think about the baby safety. This job is too stressful for a pregnant woman." Or, "Imagine if our daughter grows up and doesn't have her mother around because you're always chasing clients." His every word echoed my own first-time mother insecurities. I wondered if I could really be a good mother and a dedicated professional simultaneously. Motherhood awakened in me a fierce protective instinct, but also a vulnerability that Edward masterfully exploited. When Sophia was born, with her bright blue eyes and her cry that melted my heart, I made the decision that would change the course of my life forever. I resigned from the agency to dedicate myself fully to motherhood. Edward celebrated my decision as if I had won the lottery. "Now our family is complete," he said, kissing my forehead as I rocked Sophia. The words sounded like music to my ears, weary from sleepless nights, but I didn't realize I was signing my sentence of house arrest. The following years passed in a hypnotic routine of diapers, bottles, playgrounds, and school meetings. Edward thrived in his career, opening companies, closing multi-million-dollar contracts, traveling the country building a financial empire, while I built pillow forts in the living room. We had 2 more children, Peter and Lucy, and with each birth, my professional identity faded a little more, like ink bleaching under the relentless sun of time. Don't get me wrong, I loved my children with an intensity that sometimes scared me. Each of their smiles was a ray of sunshine in my day. Each academic achievement was a personal victory of mine. Each tight hug upon arriving from school was an injection of purpose into my existence. But in the silence of the early morning, when everyone was asleep and I was alone with my thoughts, a voice whispered insistently, "Who are you besides a mother and a wife? What happened to the woman who dreamed of conquering the world?" Edward noticed I was becoming restless and quickly acted to keep me busy and distracted. He started enrolling me in charity work, French cooking classes, Pilates, anything to keep me feeling productive without leaving the domestic sphere he'd created around me. "You're so much prettier since you stopped working," he'd say, stroking my face. "The stress was consuming you, sweetheart. Now you have time to take care of yourself, to be the wife I always dreamed of having." If you're following this story and identify with feelings of lost identity or deferred dreams, know you're not alone. Stories like mine are more common than we think, and it's important to share these experiences so other women can find strength and inspiration. Keep following accounts like this, as each story can be the key that unlocks the door to your own transformation. My life followed this seemingly perfect routine until Lucy, my youngest daughter, turned 10. Around that time, I started feeling an inexplicable emptiness. I had a beautiful home, healthy children, a successful husband, everything society expected to make me happy. But something inside me cried out for meaning, for purpose, for a piece of the woman I had once been. That's when I decided to enroll in a digital marketing course, just to keep my mind active, as I told Edward. He frowned for a moment, but then smiled condescendingly. "It's good you found a hobby, dear. Just don't let it interfere with your responsibilities at home." His words irritated me deeply, but I swallowed my anger and dedicated myself to the course with an intensity that surprised me. I discovered that the world of advertising had evolved dramatically during my absence. Social media, digital influencers, algorithms, engagement metrics — it was as if they had invented a new language while I was hibernating. But my creativity, which had been dormant for so long, awoke like a hungry beast. I started creating fictional campaigns for imaginary brands purely for pleasure, and realized I still had much to offer the professional world. The opportunity of a lifetime came through Mary, an old colleague from the agency who bumped into me at the supermarket. She had become a partner in a marketing consultancy that was looking for someone experienced to lead an innovative project for a cosmetics company. "Helen, you were always the most talented of us all," Mary said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I know you stopped working, but this project is perfect for you. It's freelance, you can work from home, and the company is willing to pay very well." My heart pounded as if I had found a lost treasure. It was exactly what I needed, a chance to prove to myself that I was still capable, that I still had professional value, that Helen, the advertising executive, hadn't completely died. I accepted the challenge without a second thought, but I made the fatal mistake of telling Edward with the excitement of a child who had just received the toy of their dreams. His reaction was like a bucket of cold water on my euphoria. "Helen, you can't be serious. You haven't worked in 15 years. Do you really think you can compete with professionals who are active in the market?" His words were like daggers aimed at my already fragile self-confidence. "Besides, who's going to take care of the kids? Who's going to keep the house clean? I have my own company to run. I can't take on your responsibilities." But this time, something different happened. Instead of withdrawing and passively accepting his arguments, I felt a flame of determination ignite within me. "I'll manage everything," I said with a firmness that surprised me. The kids are old enough, they can be alone for a few hours after school. And I'll work during my free time. I need to do this, Edward. I need to feel useful again. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of surprise, irritation, and something that seemed almost fear. "All right," he said finally, but his voice carried a cutting coldness. "But when you fail, don't come crying to me, and don't expect me to clean up the mess you're going to make in our lives." His words should have discouraged me, but they had the opposite effect. Every sarcastic comment he made during the following weeks, every disapproving look when I stayed up late working on my laptop, every exaggerated sigh when dinner was 15 minutes late, all of it only fueled my determination to prove him wrong. And I did. The project I developed exceeded all expectations. I created a revolutionary campaign that combined nostalgia with innovation, targeting women my age who, like me, had put their dreams on hold to take care of their families. The Reborn campaign not only won over clients, but went viral on social media, generating millions of views and a 300% increase in sales for the company. Every word was a slap to my soul. The man who had promised to love and support me until death do us part was there, deliberately sabotaging the most important moment of my professional life. The laughter of the other men in the room echoed like hyenas feasting on a carcass, and I felt my dignity being shattered into 1,000 fragments. But then something extraordinary happened. Instead of retreating in pain and humiliation, I felt a primal force awaken within me. It was as if all the women in my lineage, my mother, my grandmother, their mothers and grandmothers, were whispering in my ear, "You are stronger than you think. You are more capable than they imagine. You are a force of nature disguised as a housewife." I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the meeting room door with a confidence I didn't know I possessed. The scene that greeted me was exactly what I expected. Edward sitting at the table with 3 middle-aged men, all in dark suits and superior expressions. Mary was visibly uncomfortable in a chair in the corner, clearly sensing that something was wrong. When I entered, silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. "I apologize for being late," I said in a calm voice that contrasted dramatically with the storm raging inside me. Edward had the decency to look slightly embarrassed, but quickly recomposed his mask of authority. "Helen, darling, what a surprise to see you here. I was just explaining to the gentleman that—" "Gentlemen," I said, my voice now firm as granite, "before we continue discussing my professional abilities, perhaps you should know who you're doing business with." I placed a portfolio on the table and opened it, revealing documents, photographs, and bank statements that I had secretly collected over the years. "Edward Sterling, my dear husband, has a small problem with the IRS, about $5 million in undeclared taxes. And these photographs," she said, spreading shocking images across the table, "show the subhuman conditions in which the employees of his factories work. 21st century slave labor, gentlemen. Imagine the headlines if this leaks." Silence fell over the room. Edward was literally green, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The investors looked at the documents with expressions of growing horror. "How did you get this?" Edward whispered, his voice cracking. 15 years married to you taught me to pay attention to detail," I replied with a cold smile. "Every strange call you received at home, every mysterious business trip, every bank account you thought I didn't know existed. You underestimated the intelligence of the ignorant housewife you thought I was." Mary watched me with a mixture of admiration and terror. The investors began to quickly gather their documents, clearly wanting to leave as quickly as possible. Edward seemed to have aged 10 years in a matter of minutes. "Now," I continued, my voice controlled but relentless, "let's talk about my professional capabilities. The rebirth campaign you saw wasn't luck. It was the result of 15 years of observing, learning, understanding the psychology of women like me who have been underestimated, diminished, but who possess an inner strength that you men will never understand. I picked up my laptop and connected it to the room's projector. Allow me to show you not only the success of the Rebirth campaign, but also my proposal for the consultancy. A company focused on empowering women who have been forgotten by the market, who have stories to tell, products to sell, businesses to build. For the next 40 minutes, I delivered the clearest and most passionate presentation of my life. I spoke about the untapped potential of mature women in the consumer market, about how our life experience gave us a unique perspective, about how our multitasking and crisis management abilities, developed through years of raising children, made us natural leaders. I showed financial projections, market research, partnership proposals, all based on research I had secretly conducted for months. The investors who had arrived at the meeting ready to reject me were now asking detailed questions, clearly impressed by the depth and originality of my proposal. Edward remained silent throughout the presentation, his face a mask of defeat and humiliation. When I finished, one of the investors, Mr. Carter, slowly clapped his hands. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, "this is one of the most impressive presentations I've ever seen. Your proposal is not only financially viable, but also socially revolutionary. We would like to discuss the terms of investment as soon as possible." Mary jumped up from her chair and hugged me, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Helen, you're incredible. This will change everything." I looked at Edward, who was gathering the compromising documents from the table with trembling hands. "As for your problems with the IRS," I said calmly, "I suggest you get a good lawyer. And regarding the working conditions in your factories, I hope you take the necessary steps before I decide what to do with this information." He looked at me with an expression that mixed rage, fear, and, surprisingly, something that looked like respect. "You planned all this," he said softly. "All this time, you were planning to destroy me." "I didn't plan to destroy you, Edward," I replied, my voice softer now, laden with a deep sadness. "I planned to rebuild myself. The difference is that you chose to stand in my way." In the days that followed, my life changed completely. The Rebirth Consultancy was officially founded with an initial investment of $2 million. I hired a team of talented women who, like me, had been underestimated by the market, and we began working with companies that wanted to reach the powerful, mature female market. Edward and I began the divorce process, but in a civilized manner, thinking primarily of our children's well-being. He committed to resolving his legal problems and improving working conditions in his companies. It wasn't easy, but we discovered that we could be better parents apart than together. My children, initially confused by the separation, gradually began to notice the transformation in me. Sophia, now 17, told me one afternoon while we were working together, "Mom, you're shining. It's like you've woken up from a very long sleep." And she was right. I had awakened, not only to my professional capabilities, but to my inner strength, to my intelligence, to my value as an independent human being. I learned that it's never too late to start over, that our age is not a limitation, but an advantage built through experience, wisdom, and resilience. The Rebirth Consultancy became a phenomenon. We helped hundreds of women relaunch their careers, open their own businesses, and discovered that their deferred dreams were still valid and achievable. Each client who transformed their life was a confirmation that my own transformation had not been an accident, but the result of courage, determination, and the refusal to accept that my value had expired. Today, 3 years after that devastating moment in the meeting room, I look back and thank Edward for underestimating me. His betrayal was the catalyst I needed to discover who I really was beneath decades of self-neglect.
He did me a favor by showing me that I couldn't depend on anyone but myself to validate my worth. I learned that humiliation can be transformed into fuel for transformation, that pain can be converted into power, that no matter how many years you've lost being who others expected you to be, there's always time to become who you truly are. My story isn't unique. Thousands of women go through the same journey of self-discovery, face the same challenges, feel the same doubts. But each of us has within her a strength we often don't suspect exists. Sometimes we need to be pushed to the limit to discover what we're truly capable of. If you're reading this and recognize yourself in my story, know that you're not alone. That your age isn't a barrier, but a fortress built through experience, wisdom, and resilience. That your postponed dreams didn't die, they're just waiting for the right moment to blossom. And that you have within you all the power necessary to rewrite your story, to be reborn from the ashes of others' expectations, and emerge as the powerful woman you always were, but may have forgotten to be. A new beginning isn't an admission of failure. It's a declaration of war against mediocrity, against conformity, against the idea that our best days are behind us. Our best days are now. It's when we decide we deserve more, that we are capable of more, that our dreams matter as much as anyone else's dreams. Helen, the submissive housewife, died in that conference room. In her place was born Helen, the entrepreneur, the leader, the woman who transformed her pain into purpose and her humiliation into inspiration for thousands of other women. And this transformation wasn't a miracle, it was a choice. The choice to not accept less than she deserved, to not settle for the crumbs of a life others had designed for her. This is my story, a story of falls and rises, of betrayal and redemption, of discovery and rebirth. But more than that, it's a story of hope. Hope that it's never too late to start over, to rediscover who we are, to pursue our dreams with the ferocity of a woman who finally understands her own worth. And if I could do it, you can too. Your story of rebirth is waiting to be written. All you need to do is pick up the pen.